Jhanwar, but it's actually Jhanwar, and he's silent in this. But since my family name, I am not allowed to omit any of the data, right? Can't do. So, I am going to take your next 45 minutes, right, typically, into something which I have worked in. This is one of my project use case. Okay, I do not because since we have a very diverse audience, right? So few folks are from back-end, few folks are from front-end, few folks are from DevOps, right? So I'm going to cater to all because if you are giving me time, it's my moral responsibility to make your time valuable, right? So I'll keep my things grounded in case any of you find it very trivial problem to solve. Keep it with you for now, right? So this is where I'm going to take you. So let me quickly get into the next one. So what we are is beyond DSA, the model we have to deal with large data set. This is something where I ended up while sitting out with the small machines, right? By sitting with IoT, sitting with mobile phones, and where power and time and space complexity is a major factor for us, right? Whatever you do it on a small machines, especially the time complexity, right? CPU is very expensive, and running anything on your device, we will have to justify to a lot of stakeholders. So, okay, guys, this PPT took me typically 10 hours to create this. Okay, I don't know when people say, I really still never understood in my life that when people say that I created PPT in 5 minutes. I don't, you've done some sort of blunder and you are glorifying that blunder is something which I do not buy. For me, PPT before LLM, I'm a guy who used to take typically 5 working days to create a PPT. Any PPT that I create, I am not satisfied with any of my work, to be very frank. Okay, but after LLM coming up into my life, I realized I am able to build PPTs fast, for sure. At least for diagrams. Right? That's where LLMs really help me. Content, no. I do not allow LLMs to create my content. I'm very pessimistic about those areas. You help me to build the diagrams so that I connect more with you guys, but not creating the flow. How will I navigate the content for all of us, right? So, how many of you have create LLM in typically 2 hours and all? These people are able to build. Oh, now nobody will say. I'm screwed. So anyway, guys, let's get into the. So this is who am I professionally, guys. Does not matter. 15 years in the tech. I do not know how much of my experience is relevant. Right? At this point, things are changing. People have changed. The Gen Z has changed. Right? A lot of people question me that what you're doing is not right. And every time we cannot be right just because we are experienced, it does not give you a damn right that you are right just because you think you are right. Right? So, I started my career doing with a startup 10 years with Samsung. I see one sir who worked in Samsung. Then moved to Walmart. I see one of the Walmart folks. So I know what you guys go through it. Right? So, and then I really left corporate for some time. So I'm a very lazy guy, guys, by nature. In my life, I never wanted to work. Okay, I say give me money and I'm okay. Right? No work and all. But somehow the society pressure somehow keeps me engaged in tech. Right? And tech is something which I do it irrespective of whether people pay me or not. Okay. And from the corporate life, I turn into something called as tech evangelist. So I'm basically a consultant guy for my startups. I help people that how they build startups. Irrespective of any tech, I do not advocate for any tech. What I advocate is the business problem that you're trying to solve. And that is more interesting to us. Because you will realize that, I'm sure all of you will agree that more than machines, it's the human which give us a kick. Machine go in the way as you want it to go. Humans does not. Do you agree? Yes. Right? I mean, that's the way we are designed. So playing with humans is far bigger deal for us than playing with machines. And across the domain, most of the experience has gone into browser. That's the team where I belong, and operating system for short. Right? So these are something which are true to my heart, which I still do irrespective of whether the domain I work or not. At this point for my customer, I help them solve 3 problems. One is their statistics. I solve them to understand the patterns in the data via statistics. Second, which I really take care of is the probability. The data that you render it on the systems, what's the probable rate of it is coming onto the user device. The third thing which I really help them at this point is And most of my customers deal with this problem of cryptography. Right? How does the hashing and actually security, which will help you in terms of AI. So that's where my time goes into it. I do not make money from the domain which I talk about it. I make money only from my consulting area, but this is something which I do it to help them that whatever product you are building, your vision has to be aligned with security in terms of what data you are showing it. And that's what we talked just before, right? So the agenda for next 40 minutes now is the data structure, right? First thing is we will talk about some part of DS, because the game is all about DS, right? From the day one, once you join IT, it's all about DS. If it is not, probably you're in the wrong game. The second thing which we'll talk about is why the data handling now matters. It has been always matters, in fact, if you ask me, but now it is far more evident. Lot of your day-to-day office or your customers actually question this, right? That how do I handle it in the most optimized way without burning my earth? Data centers are a cost, right? Anything that you run, the data center runs on electricity, that's a cost. Electricity burns again my earth, right? So that problem of solving can be, that problem of burning the earth can only be solved if you design your software in a more sufficient way, where we don't consume CPU cycles, right? And then the problem statement, and then how I solved it, right? So let me get into this quickly. So DS and problem solving guys, right? The first thing, any DS that you talk about, maybe linked list, graph, whatever we have worked on, right? A tracking of data using backtrack or dynamic programming. Everywhere the way you store the data defines a lot of stuff. Say you use a hash map, right? Key value. Given that you have a key, now literally you can get your data in O of 1. Typically it is never O of 1, but almost closer to O of 1 is what we aim for. Right? You're setting out say 100 folks. The moment somebody says Manish, the data has to be retrieved in O of 1. If I have to start from top to bottom, that just defeats my purpose. Right? Or you do it in an alphabetical way. That also is still okay, but not the best approach, right? But I need that the moment you say somebody's data, it should pinpoint me over there in the O of 1, right? And then retrieving data, obviously. CPUs are the most expensive data, right? We all know. People are okay to buy hard disk, people are okay to play with SSD, flash, right? Whatever you say, right? Because that is still cheap in terms of cloud or in terms of your own machines, right? But the problem that really happens is when you want to retrieve a data, right? You cannot afford your user to wait, right? It has to be always in the best way, irrespective of what your data size. As a user, I really don't matter. It doesn't really bother me whether you are looking into petabytes of data, terabytes of data. It doesn't matter. The moment if I ask you anything, you should give me the answer then and there, right? That's how it really works. So this whole thing, right? Whatever we do in our life in terms of software is always on space and time always. Space is something which we are still debating whether do we really worry about the space at this point. It's still okay, but time for sure, no. Nobody really, even if you say in today's interview pattern, right? Everyone grills you on time obviously, right? People cannot afford to buy extra CPU cycles. As we said, hard disk are still cheaper. Okay, why efficient data handling matters the most, right? Given the first thing for sure is a distributed system, right? Everything that you put it on your ecosystem, everything does not reside within your own world, right? People have moved it across the world. Machines are moving from left to right. It does not matter. If you are watching Netflix here, it does not matter whether the Netflix is sitting out, the server is sitting out in Singapore or in Europe, right? It really does not matter now. What you want is the fastest possible way, and that's the reason. Typically you will see whatever the cluster or the area becomes cheap, you end up buying that, especially if you come from a startup world. Microservices are growing. This guy has gone crazy, right? I mean, people started pitching in microservices saying that it helps me to decouple and all that, and now I see for a single project, typically you end up creating 50 microservices. Right? Each microservice is its own DB. The cost to manage the microservices, the cost to talk from one MS to another MS has become very expensive. So, and that will continue to grow. There is no doubt about it that microservice solves a genuine problem. But I realize over a period it has become more of a hype. Even for, especially when I play with today's scenario, the moment I kickstart any project, right? My customer tells me, Manish, are you going to use microservices? Right? I really don't understand that for a startup typically, you really don't need a microservice. Right? What you need is just a monolithic app, then you have all your cluster DBs, everything sitting out in one go, and you make it live. Managing microservices is still a cost. So for every single world, right, microservices does not fit. Yeah, it fits well for big enterprises, given that the teams are scattered, given the way you do deployment is different, and given you cannot afford to have it downtime. But for a startup or a mid-size, still that's debatable, right? For me, what really matters is the cost, and the cost of going live is very important. AI agents, right? These guys have screwed a lot of my life, if you ask me. I mean, I'm sure all of you will agree. Right? I really don't understand, guys. When I talk about AI agents and all, the first thing that people talk about is a wrapper. Right? Maybe ADK, maybe strands, whatever the name that you want to give it. Right? But it's a wrapper sitting out on a line graph, typically. Right? And what I'm really interested in, how people have built agents. Not how people have used a wrapper here all around. Right? Be a software engineer, right? So far, we have been getting most of the money because we created a complex project. If the complexity of the software goes down, right, do you think people will pay us? Right? Even a 2-year guy or a fresher will be able to code better than me, especially in terms of strand SDK and all that I have seen it. Right? So, if the complexity of the software goes down, the people who will still drive this domain is who understand how fundamentally every single tech stack beneath the world works. That's why I'm a strong advocate of that. Whatever you do, right, even in terms of any sort of wrapper that you're using, go into that cursor and go into every single framework implementation and how people have built under the hood, right? But yeah, I mean, it's all still a challenge because the moment AI turns up, I realize that everyone is sitting out on the pace, right? Every development, every release that you do has to go in days, right? People do not talk. Now months have gone, I think, right? People saying how many hours will you be able to build it, right? That has gone crazy, but yeah, this is something which over a time, I give a lot of blame to media here, right? Because my customers have become more smart than me, and that's where the problem is, right? So, if they take, and a lot of people have demonstrated this AI in somehow, guys, I don't know whether how many of you agree that everything is deployable or shippable in just 1 hour. Right? You're sitting out in a workshop, you create a Uber app, and you make it live in a day. Right? I front end, back end, web app, right? Everything is live. And then my customer says, yeah, Manish, this is something which is amazing. So can we do this, make this project live in a day? Right? How do I justify it? That is something which is a very bigger problem. I'm sure in your office you will see a lot of stakeholders, especially the non-tech guys. Right? They think that everything can be derived with AI, right? So nowadays what I started doing it when I do estimation for my startups, I created 2 column based. So every single features that I talk about to build it for them, I say one is human driven, second is machine driven. Right? And that has actually helped me, if you ask me, right? What machines can do and where I will pitch in to actually which machines cannot do it. Right? So somehow the process of unlearning for non-tech guys has grown up very heavy for me. Okay, and I really, I don't know how to solve it, but it's our duty as a tech community, right, to correct the folks that what is at which people will be able to do it, what is at where machines will not be able to help us. Right? It's our duty. Developers are pretty decent, yeah. Whatever the managers say, they end up saying yes. Right? And that's where the problem begins. Right? But I understand we are in the market where demand and supply ratio comes up. So as long as the demand, the supply is very high, people will really play very smartly to keep their jobs alive, right? But somehow the justification part, right? But whatever features that we do it's our duty to say that where machines will genuinely help and where it will not be able to help. Right? Until you clarify those doubts to non-tech stakeholders, the problem will continue to pile up. Yeah, this is obviously for sure, you know. At this point, everybody needs insight, right? Whatever data that keep piling up. The moment I put my chatbot on, I am going to ask you a lot of insight, right? How do I make money? How do I get my production live the fastest way? How do I get the KPIs that I want? Typically, right? Everybody needs, and this is something which is where I feel that AI is actually helping heavily. If I need the fastest insight, right? The reports which I used to do before AI typically used to take a month. Now it has actually gone in a day. Right? I am able to bring more insight for them, and this is where I feel that it actually helped me a lot. Now, eventually the solution which draws the less power is the always. Like CPU cycles are expensive. If you get me your solutions which draws less power for consumers, this will definitely win the game. Okay, now let's get into the problem statement where I started with, right? So while doing this project, real commercial project, the first problem that really happens is I was about to develop a solution which has to go in smaller computing device, say IoT device or mobile phone, whatever you want to assume. But now it typically device which have less processing capability and less space into it, right? I wanted to store this large chunk of data and query if the data exists. That was the only problem statement based. But remember, this problem was not on the cloud. It was on a device which is very resource less. You really don't have much things to do. Now, so let's say, how did I put this problem, right? There are multiple applications that exist on a device. For now, assume this is a mobile app scenario which I'm talking about. On a mobile phone, typically Android or Apple, whatever you say, you have a lot of applications sitting out on a device. Me as a solution consultant for them, I wanted to identify all the applications which draws the power. So you say for example, if say Asian customer sitting out, right? I see Ola typically exists if somebody goes compute, right? And then I wanted to calculate that what are the apps which draws more power. I have a list of my own apps. So what we ended up doing is figuring out first of all for every specific geographies which are the apps which basically consume more power. When I say more power, typically the data for us was a heap memory case. If your heap keep piling up, I know at some point device memory you are taking in more. So if memory goes up, typically when memory goes up, the CPU cycle also will clock in. Right? That's the way the CPU, if the data goes up, the processing will anyway go in. So that's why we started with now, how do I put it? Every application that runs on your Android device especially is basically a Linux process typically. Right? It's nothing apart from your Linux. Android is a Linux implementation. So every application that you have is a Linux process, and every Linux process has its own UID, unique identifier, right? So typically, say for example, package name. So if I say I play with the Gmail app, the package name is com.google.android.com. That's a string. You cannot have two different apps running on your device with the same package. Android will never permit. Right? So UID for two different apps cannot be same. Now, I wanted to store 3 million packages. Okay, 3 is 30 lakhs, which I had a list of on myself. Okay, so these are lists which we created, saying that these are the apps that consume more power. Okay, on your device. Now, why I wanted to do this for every OEM in the world, typically to say the power is a big problem, right? Battery. The moment you capture more battery, it's a sign of warning or a red flag for OEM, right? So what we ended up basically wanting to identify is that what normally user end up storing apps and who can be the possible culprit or the red signals for us. Okay, where we have to. So we just wanted to collect this data. Absolutely nothing that relates with a specific user. No good OEM will ever do it. Right? People still have a doubt that a lot of people say that we end up retrieving your data and all that. Typically, no good OEM will ever retrieve a single user data. We typically, every single OEM you know that we classify your data as some sort of cluster all the time, and through that we characterize. Right?
Which tool you use to understand which application is going to call? Is it a tool or some script? You have simulation.
So in our case, we did our own study. It's a 1-year project for us, where we wanted to get the list of apps say sitting out in India. So we did, for every single app that runs on your Android phone, we took a graph, figure out the heap and got this data. Okay, now let me, so the input into this system, anybody have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. You said you have 3 million apps, then how do you test it? You have any software?
At this point, the talk goes beyond the scope of that. So that was a 1-year project for us, where we wanted to figure out, so when we say app which consume more power, okay, this is far more debatable. If you are sitting on say on a very high flagship phone, the app may not consume more power for you. But if you are sitting on a device which has got tier 2 user, which is sitting on a say 4 GB of RAM, right?
But my question is, how do you come to a conclusion? How do you tested 3 million apps in 1 year? And there are a lot of devices.
No, okay. For a lot of devices, I'll clarify. We only create one single device. Okay, it was only one specific user device. I will not name it because obviously it is not supposed to be. It could be any device, you assume for now. It could be even IoT device.
These devices different RAM.
These devices have the device always have one RAM.
No, I mean the size of RAM is different.
No. For that sake, so we only played with one single variation case. One device having a fixed solid RAM and fixed solid CPU.
I mean, what is your standard RAM?
Does that really, why you are interested? So for us the solid RAM was 4 GB and it was a processor which is typically clocking at the cycle of 1.4 I think. 1.2, I don't remember, 1.2 or 1.4 GHz is what we were trying to debate.
Yeah, I'm interested like how did you test it? 3 million hours.
3 million, how did we test it? Guys, there is selenium, right?
No, but
You have a lot of tools.
No,
if our capacitor install 3 billion packages like what is
We have. If somebody is on customer base, I will always have the It is possible. Guys, everyone you understand analytics, right? How do we analytics do, saying that if this app is there on the device, what RAM, you get all the data sitting out. Even a lot of data, you get it only from Kaggle. Okay, if you do deep insight, you will realize most of the apps data is also on a Kaggle. Okay, so there is a lot of things, but yeah, and as of now, only one device we create. Okay, and now this device, we wanted to install this solution on the device where we said that a data structure which holds a repository of 3 million. The input to that particular solution was a package name and output is check if the package exists. As simple. True or false. Input is a string of my package. It validate and go and sit in this repository where it tells that if the package exists or not and just return me true or false. So input to the software is the package name, which is a string. Output is a boolean, that if the package exists or not. Identify. So my job responsibility was identify all the packages and send it to the package. Okay, this is just to figure out that what are the typical apps which are a red signal on that particular model. Right, and then no validation of heavy drawing package on a device that can be. Yeah, this was the rule for us that any app which user is running, you cannot afford to skip that app. So say for example, the moment my solution comes live on your device, I will do a for loop of all your apps to figure out all packages, and then I will validate that out of all 100 packages, if you are running on your device, what are the packages which is drawing more power by validating from my repository. Right? That was a simple. It looks very simple solution, right? That what is the problem in this? This is one of the very simple. So the problem. My file size that I created, right, cannot exceed more than 15 MB. That was the rule. Now why that rule and all we can debate, but that's how my stakeholders told that the solution that you put in on a user device cannot be more than 15 MB. Okay, given that the size of my SSD or a disk on that was only close to around 80 GB, so we cannot afford to do this, right? Second condition is device cannot afford to heat. The moment you put your solution, you are doing a time pass on user device, right? And you cannot make their processor go on, or your CPU cycles cannot heat up, or cannot clock up typically, right? So that was one very heavy condition. That means I'm not allowed to run a for loop and all, right? The moment I do this, it will definitely not be a good solution. So if you guys have this problem,
But we are not connected to the cloud.
we are not connected to the cloud, obviously. Guys, when I talk about this the problem statement, what's the first solution that gets in your mind? How it is something which we can do? If you are at my place, how will you do it? Put a hash map. Very nice, right? That's you are a good developer, right? So that's what came to me also. It looks like key value on a problem, right? You have all your keys, you have value, and then find out from the key and try to get it over what, right? Contains, right? Yeah, correct. Right? So that is how I also thought. But the problem is the moment you put this as a string, right? The typically file. So we did this. Okay, whatever he said is a very valid point. I did this exercise as an engineer, right? And the file size that I got was close to around 161 MB. Right? So obviously I cannot sell that solution. So initially to begin with, brute force, right? I'm a simple engineer that take all the strings, put this in a text file and see what happens. Obviously, I mean, very blunt solution obviously, because in a text file if you do it as key characters and all that, the file size will blow up. So this turned out to be around 260 MB as far as I remember.
How about using a try?
How is something?
Using a try.
Try. You said TRY or TRI? Okay, try. You mean that DS, right? Yeah, yes. That was a solution which we were coming up closer to that. Second was hash. So this brute force anyway did not work. This was more than 250 MB. Hash map, as you said, right? Rightly, that hash map was also looked, but did not give me the number. Second is okay, as some optimization, right? Because I have to request my manager that okay, we are doing something. Every single day is the output, right? So I said, okay, let's take the string, take the bytes out of the string, and then put it up in. Right? So I said, okay, from 250 MB, it turned out to 200 MB. So something I'm working on, right? So he said, okay, this will not work, right? Then okay, we said, so then we said that okay, let's try hashing, right? People are saying that we are very. How many of you guys understand hashing? Right? Oh, many of us, right? So MD5 as typical as normal engineer, I said, okay, let me take a 128-bit MD5 hashing, and if I can do anything, it is 128 into 3 million packages. Right? That's a space complexity that I am coming up with that point. But when I took this, obviously, I mean, it's a 128-bit, and so here, when does the collision happens? When I say I have taken a 128-bit hashing, there will be after 2 to the power of 16. So if you say it's a 128-bit Bala flow.
There will never be in production because the package names are different.
Package name, but what if two packages turned out give me the same hash data? Is there no probability of that?
Yeah, that can happen because the package names are unique, right?
Unique, yeah. But a two unique name can not give the same hash code.
Yes.
It is like so if I say 128-bit, basically the possible combination that I am talking about 2 to the power of 128. Got it, right? So the collision will start happening as per the science is 2 to the power of 64. After 2 to the power of 64, I can actually have one or two collision for sure. Collision will continue to go up. Right? So, but you're right. Probably in this case I would have never had collision actually because my size was very high. Okay. But the problem again, even if I did a 128-bit, the file size that I got, I think close to around 60 or 70 MB. Okay. But again, so you know, right? MD5 hashing and all are a crypto hashing, and MD5 is normally very slow hash. The moment you take your input string and you do a XOR on top of these hashed, it will slow down. Right? So obviously, from CPU point of view as well as from space complexity, this is not the best solution given that 15 MB is a limit for me. Right. Okay, then I went to some Google paper to understand how does this buffer concept work, right? Protocol buffer and you all know plan buffer. How many of you know this protocol buffer and plan?
I know
Protocol, any other? Proto buffer. Right, so these are very popular serialization technique guys. Google is the champ on top of it. So what they tell you that if you want to store a data, right, every storage of data is typically JSON say or XML is more of a human design philosophy, right? It is meant for humans to read, right? So that anytime you deserialize or serialize it, you know what data is getting into the machine, right? And what this guy says is that eventually at the end of the day, every data is a machine, infusion, right? So if you put everything into a byte, an optimized way of bytes, the size can be reduced. Now, protocol, okay, just to cover my slide, right? Protocol buffer is a serialization technique where I take, so there is something called proto buffer compiler. Okay, this proto buffer takes your data and converts into the byte. And from the byte, it gives me a library. I mean, every programming language, say Python, Go, or Java, everyone have their libraries through which you can actually read this data. It's just one of the serialization techniques sitting out on bytes. Okay. Now I thought, okay, let me try this also protocol buffer. So I did protocol buffer and flat buffer. This gave me a good number, which I was expecting. This gave me, I think, around close to 65 or 60 MB. Okay, if I put this data in this format, I got some optimization. But the problem with that really happened with prot buffer. First of all, it did not fit my size. Second thing which I realized is this protocol buffer, like whenever I want to read the data into my memory, this will load the whole data into my heap. And that's another problem. I'm not allowed to load the whole data into the heap here. I'm running out on a very less memory device, and then you tell me to load the thing, it will shoot up my user phones. Right? So obviously this was not allowed for me. Then I went into something called as flat buffer. I said that this sounds good. Now flat buffer, what it does is, you serialize your data, get the byte array, but whatever the data that you need, right, I will directly pinpoint that index and get the data for you. So deserialization only happens for the data which you really need. Every other byte array remains on your disk. Right? So this was kind of, but remember, this is at the cost of a space complexity. The space will increase. Okay, but CPU clock cycle will be very useful for me because there is zero copy. Okay, wherever you want the data, hit the data in that particular index directly and get the data. So faster, but it does not fit into my bill. Right, but if you have not seen it, we have not taken into very deeper way. But flat buffer, if you see all the games guys, all the gaming companies, right, when we play games on your devices, everywhere you will see at least one or the other product uses flat buffer. This is very popular on a low intensive device because you really don't have to decode the whole byte array. That's the best part of this game. Right, so okay, we'll anyway not go deeper into this.
These are the file types that you are storing, right? So
Okay.
the low-level data structure remains to be a hash map, right?
Low level for these, no, for you mean protocol buffer?
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
These will not be hash. Protocol buffer will be a flat array of zeros and ones.
So, is this not just a file format, or is this an actual data structure that you are? I just wanted to ask. So, we started with hash map, which is a data structure with a particular format of input and output. So, are say proto buffers and flat buffers also the same? Because I know JavaScript buffers, but I don't think they are the same.
No. So protocol buffer and flat buffer, it's not something which you can compare with key map. Key map, hash map is just one way of storing a data. Under the map, if you see hash map is just an array with a linked list. Right, normally, right? But this guy is not about talking about that particular data structure. It's just a serialization techniques of how do we say, for example, if I have to put say Praveen into the code, right? It will just convert that into a byte array and it will maintain the index of where the data is being stored. So it is just a serialization technique, but not with comparing with the hash map probably will be a wrong analogy.
Right. So you were not storing essentially all of the package data, right?
In this one, I did.
You did.
Yeah, I have to store all data. Right, because I want to literally.
And it still was in 60 MB.
Yeah, the size was still. So what we really wanted, guys, if you look at what I just wanted is a simple array, right? I wanted a simple array of zeros and ones which does not store data. So remember, in this my input to the system is always, I have already know the package name. I just want to validate if the package exists in my data source or not. Right? That was the only case. So input is anyway coming. I really do not need to retrieve every single package from my solution. What I wanted is given, if you say Gmail, just tell me whether Boolean true or false, Gmail exists or not. As simple, right? Now what I really wanted is only set the bits of a hash index of data. So somehow some logic through which I take your input string, I convert into a specific index of an array and validate if the bits are being set in the array or not. That is somehow, that logic is what, even that time we did not know about Bloomfilter. Okay, when we created this solution, the only ideology which we wanted is that can I have some sort of a byte array where I store and convert those hashed value of input source to that byte. Right? That was the only solution which we needed, and obviously with zero collision, right? Because a array size I will have to define. Right? What if my array size goes full? Right? So I have to, as a developer, we have to make sure that collision does not happen. Now, this is where we are coming very close to group. Okay, so typically, normally if you see, right, there is an input if I say Java Fest. So this PPT I have created for Java Fest. Okay, that happened with the input this row. Java Fest comes as an input string. Now somehow from this input, right, I just wanted to create 2 to 3 indexes of an array so that I can store those array as ones. Initially my array size is 0, no, not 0, I mean all the bits of an array are 0. Okay, whatever the bits that I get, say 0, 3, 6, set those bits as 1. So next time what happens is the moment I get another string, use the same formula of getting the indexes and validate. Something like that. Now I'll tell you, I know we have many questions on this. Okay, now let me complete this figure. You have an element which you want to store, give it to 3 hashing function, figure out 3 different indexes. So input is Java press, index 0 I got, I set the bit as 1, index 3 I got set as 1, index 6 I got set as 1. Remember in this array I am not storing the actual data. It has got no connection to the actual data. Whatever I am setting is from input identifying a hashed value, and from a hashed value do a modulo operator with respect to the size of an array and figure out some indexes which I can set bits. Now this is the whole philosophy of the Bloomfilter.
But in this, how much maximum has to become those?
How much, that depends upon your problem. You can always tweak. See, the more hashing, number of hashing you do, the very less chances of having a collision. The more hashing you do, but the problem with more hashing you do is you need a larger array. So it's always a fine balance between the number of hashing function that you want and the size of an array that you are going to store. I'll tell you as I'm going to proceed in this what formula is used. Okay, guys, once I started using Bloomfilter, I got my data. It's 13.7 MB. That was the best part of my game because the moment we experimented, I have to make sure that 3 million fits into my 15 MB wali category. Right, 13.7 MB is the Bloomfilter file which I created. So this serves my at least a space operation. The problem now that comes is time complexity, right? I'm running on a CPU choke. Right? What if I end up choking my CPU? I will have to answer. Now, for that, what we ended up doing. Let's get into this. What is actually Bloomfilter? So far, you understood that somehow for this problem statement, Bloomfilter turned out to be a good solution. Right? You also got some idea that I'm playing with one array which is full of bits, a bit array or a byte, whatever you call, and which has got some specific hashing way where I have added. Right? Now I'll tell you how does that guys work. So what's a Bloomfilter? First, right? That's the official definition. It's a space efficient data structure which tells whether an element is present or not. It's a probabilistic data structure base. This is where the game begins of Bloomfilter. A lot of people still don't understand that why it is being called as a probabilistic data structure. If Bloomfilter says that the element is not in the set, okay, then it is definitely not in the set. Okay. But what if, so say for example, let's say if I want to insert Manish into the Bloomfilter, I insert Manish, and now next time I query, does Manish exist or not? The answer will be yes or no. Since I have inserted, it should tell me Manish, right? Now the moment I say, okay, let's insert Bangalore into it, right? Now I have not inserted Bangalore, okay, now for now. But the moment I query Bangalore, logically it should give me Bangalore is not present, right? Because I never inserted. But there is a probability that even though you never inserted elements, I can still end up telling you it is present. That's a risk you are going to take with your system. So for a data, I'll just put it in a word, okay? For a data, if I have inserted my name or any package name into my data structure, it will always tell me data exists, for sure, guaranteed. But for any new data which you have never inserted, it may tell you it is there or it may tell you it is not there. No guarantee. Third thing, what it tells you for sure, if I am telling you as a Bloomfilter that this data does not exist, that means it never exists. That is 100% guarantee. That is what we call false negative in Bloomfilter. That means if I tell you data does not exist, it means there is no way this data will ever exist. It does not exist. But for any new data, right, it may or may not. And that is what we call false positive. Any doubts here, guys?
Yeah.
What is false positive? What is false negative?
Do you have any accuracy number how accurate this is?
Yeah. We can always tweak the accuracy number. That's a valid point. That I do not want any false positive, right?
Yeah.
I always want here, if I have inserted, give me the right data. Don't tell me it is not there, right? You have a number. You can probably. So How does that comes?
Yeah.
That comes when you increase your hashed functions as well as you increase the size of it a bit. I'll tell you how does it work. Then you have very clarity.
So in your use case, you have a fixed set of
Data. Fixed is a wrong way. I have some sort of known data.
known data.
It is not fixed.
What if the data is like growing?
Data is growing. Yeah.
How do you fit in a Bloomfilter, or is it possible to actually fit in a Bloomfilter? Let's say the apps are like getting, every day there are like millions of apps getting uploaded. Apps getting uploaded. Can you fit your solution in a Bloomfilter? You have to do something.
At this point, no. If your data is continuously growing, you cannot revisit the same Bloomfilter. What we ended up doing, next time when I crawl my pages and I get a new package list, right? I create a new Bloomfilter file and I push that Bloomfilter to my consumer list. Right, but you can't modify the existing one. Right, now why you can't modify is something which we'll see it in this list. Okay, why you cannot modify? Once you have say 3 million packages and I created my bit array, why I can't modify? You will get to know now in this. So this is something which is not new. Right? This is something which is there from 1970. There is a paper called Space and Time Trade-off in Hash Coding with allowable errors. So Bloomfilter turned out from this paper. Okay. Now this is something which has been used across many places, guys. Those who are DB lovers, your DB and all is something which has been using Bloomfilter from day one. Okay. Your browser also uses in terms of spam filtering plus a lot of different occasions. It is also using CDN, distributed networks, distributed system, CDN, content delivery networks, typically. It uses across a lot of spectrum. We'll talk about where it is being used, but just to give you an insight, right? Say for example, database, in-memory database, or any sort of even disk based, right? Remember, when you want to query your disk, a disk operation is always expensive. Right. Querying your disk in O of 1 is something which is not very efficient. Right. You will have to query the disk and then get the data. But querying your memory is always faster and it is also cheap, at least for that instance, for sure. Right. Now what does Bloomfilter, where it is being used? Now the data that you want to query, right? Tell me one thing, if the data itself does not exist, there is no point of querying my disk. I will have to look into my disk caches and from there I will get it, right? But what if you can cache that values right into Bloomfilter? Say for example, if I just want to say what really happens is, if say for example I want to query a data, any string, DAO, okay, you want to query DAO. Now the moment Bloomfilter tells it, so initially you query your Bloomfilter, you tell whether the data exists or not, or at least the hash value exists or not. If the Bloomfilter say no, okay, that data does not exist, then there is no point of querying your disk. The lookup of disk time is actually saved heavily, especially for in-memory database where they play with the fastest processing. For disk also they do. But I remember seeing the example of the most popular chain, right? Redis and all. That way I have seen that in their article they have written very clearly, and everyone will modify guys Bloomfilter based on their use case. So here I am only talking about the generic use case of Bloomfilter. It does not mean they end up using the existing libraries of Bloomfilter. Okay, they end up modifying the Bloomfilter based on each one their use case. Because for a Bloomfilter to modify, you have an array and you have a hash. Right? You will have to play your project requirement into that, and how does my bill size will fit. Now, okay, we'll talk about it. Let me first tell you what it says. So, okay, this is what we discussed. If the element is ever inserted, it will always return true when you ask for it. That is guaranteed. You insert your name into it, it will always tell, yeah, the name exists. It will never return false for the element which has been inserted. It will never return false. That means once you insert an element, it will never return that it is not there. Because bits are already being set. Now, here comes the catch. For the element which has never been inserted, it may even return true. That probability is still there. You guys are able to see? Okay, so the element which is very new to the Bloomfilter, still if you ask it, there is a probability that I can tell you it exists, even though you never insert it. Why and how? That will answer. So let's take this case. Let's take this pretty generic example. Simple array, all bits 0. The size is 10. Okay. Now, so let's say for example I want to store a word geek. Okay, that's my input. Now what I do is I take it geek through 3 different hash functions. Okay, these are 3 different hashing. But remember these are same hashing functions which I am using. I am just making it pass across 3 layers. 147 is what I got because I did modulo of 10. Okay, that's because modulo of 10 is size of 10. I got 3 indexes, 147, 147. These are the bits which I have said 1. The rest everything is still 0. Okay. Now let me say with a new word, say nerd. 354. Okay, it gave me 354. 3, 5 and 4. All again became 1. Right? So you see whatever word I am coming, those particular bits I am setting it as 1. Rest everything I am not touching. The array is only of zeros and ones. It has got no other values. Okay.
You can't remove any word from this.
I cannot remove any word from.
You are inserting the word. Can I remove the word? Is that possible?
Can you remove the word? Okay. That sounds interesting. Can you remove it? Guys, what do you think? Will you be able to remove the word?
No.
You can replace.
But then that would change the bits
Yeah.
for other
You can't.
You can't, right? The movement means the problem is here. What if my other word also comes into one of those indexes? And if I make it 0, my other data also get corrupted. That's why Bloomfilter default version does not allow you to modify any data once you insert it. Because then the bits has already been set. Now, okay, guys, I got 354, okay. Now say for example, the new word cat is coming, okay. Now remember, so far I have not inserted cat. It gives me 137, but look at it, in my previous one, right, 137 is already 1. Now that's where the magic actually happens. The bits are already set to 1. Now even if I would have not inserted cat, and if I ask directly, is my cat present? This guy, by this bit array, would have given me 1. That the bit array exists, so cat actually exists. Did you see? That's the problem.
No, those are questions. What instruction you are sending to check that?
Same. I'm sending it back cat. Right. Again, it will go through my hashing function, figure out the same index.
You can then check it.
Then it will validate. So for him to return true, all these 3 indexes has to be 1.
You just said that a word that is not there can give a false positive.
Correct.
But then that's the same with the false negative also. The word is there.
So-
Cat or you say example, whatever was that. If that word is there, but then cat, it would give yes.
No, I tell you. So when I say false negative, you should remember in false negative it means the answer from a Bloomfilter is always false. Okay, that means the Bloomfilter is telling you the element does not exist. False negative means it is guaranteed the element does not exist. That means if Bloomfilter is telling you that the cat does not exist, that means it never exists. Because why it is telling you, that means those bits, right, 3 values has never been set. At least one of the bit is missing. That's why false negative is guaranteed 100% correct. False positive because what if the 2 values turns out to be a similar index or one of the index? It may return you the true positive. That's where the problem happens. Now, you remember here, without inserting cat, this guy would have told me, yes, I exist. What will you do? Even though if you never inserted in me, it is there in my TS, right? What will you do? That's the problem. But remember here, now suppose say for example, I take another new word which returns me say 8, 9, 10. Okay, these are the 3 indexes which I get. Okay, now if I directly query that say new word, say Davon, which I never inserted, and this would have always, and it returns you 890, and if it tells you it is false, that means you know, right? The Bloomfilter will only tell you false when one of the bit is 0, for sure. Got it? So that means it is guaranteed. That if one of the bit is 0, that means that nobody has ever inserted in that particular index. So there is no way that you will get a wrong answer for it. Right, so that's where Bloomfilter magic lies here. That if one of my bit is 0, that means it is 100% guaranteed. You guys, we have never inserted that word into our deals. Right, that's where any doubts here, guys?
For the false positives, how do you mitigate that with different hashing functions?
For false positive, the same hash function it will go, but it may end up returning the same indexes.
I understand, but how do you mitigate that?
How do we mitigate? How mitigate?
Hashing
More
functions.
hash functions.
More hash, very valid. More hash.
Using the array size.
Yeah, you
Using
know.
increase in the array size, very true. Right? The more increases you do to array size, you will have less chances of hitting the same hash indexes. Correct? And that's how we actually did. So in our case, like, when we push the solution to the line, right, we had a 0 false positive. 0.
How do you choose the optimum number?
How do we choose the optimal number? Yeah, that's a question. That on what basis will you divide? So for experimenting, I always used to experiment with those values. Okay, what we did is we increase the number of hashing functions. We also increase the size of an array just to verify. So this is something which you cannot make it live in one go. You will have to experiment with your data set. Whether my data set does it really value or not. And this is always the fine balance between your size of the array and the number of hash functions. Right? If I have less hash functions here, what does it mean?
More collision.
More collision. Right? But what if I have less hash and more size of the array?
You can also choose the type of hashing function.
You can choose the type of the hashing
So that
function.
the actual data gets spread across,
Right.
not many.
So you mean one time I use MD5, second time I use sharp
No, no.
or murmur?
No, I'm saying that you choose the hash functions collectively in such a way
Yeah.
that the output actually spreads up
Spread across. Of the same hash function.
of the same.
Same function.
Why is it important to use the same hash function?
Why it is important to use the same hash function for all the things? What do you think? Why I have used only one hash function for storing also, for retrieving also? Why?
Otherwise, it would
Both
No, not for
Different
storing and
mode.
retrieving, but three hash functions.
Oh, so why did I go only for 3? So that my collision gets less. Guys, if I have 3 probability, right? 1, 3, 7, it is always better to look at 3 different indexes rather than looking at 2 indexes. 2 means what if the other guys have also made those bits true? The more hash I have, the more 2 to the power of combinations will I have. Right? That's the whole logic is, right? What is combination? 2 to the power of how many size combinations you want to generate. The more combination I create, the less chances of having the same input resulting in the same index. Right? Did I make sense here? I have brought all my time, guys.
There is, you can continue if there's shortage of time.
But we will take it then?
Yeah.
Yeah. 5 more minutes. He is already given. Okay.
AI.
Oh my God. So, this we know, this we know, this we know, this we know. Let's quickly get through this. Okay, this we understood, right? Now, let me quickly go into something called base. So, I was more interested towards how hashing is being passed, right? Then I have to go deeper into what is crypto hashing, what is non-crypto hashing. Okay, so MD5 and SHA are normally crypto hashing, right? So when you do crypto, so hashing, if you know, guys, is it first of all, is it meant to be reversible?
No.
No, right? Hashing is not meant to be reversible. So the moment you do a hash function, basically to one input and you get a one output. From an output, you should never derive input back. That means it has failed my logic. But for this guy, right? Do you think from an output, even if somebody is able to get an input, is there any problem?
No.
No, right? That's the reason what Bloomfilter actually uses is a murmur hash, which is a non-cryptographic hash. This is, as per the reports, and the one I wanted to see how is the benchmark and all, it is 3x faster than MD5. That's the number that they do. Okay, so murmur is very fast. That's the reason we use. So it is again same 128 bit, 120 you can tweak it. By default, the library gives you 120 and 2 to the power of 120 is more than enough for normally the data. This is designed for speed and performance. Reverse, this can be decoded and reverse engineered. Right? But it is okay in our case. Even if it is reverse engineered, it does not harm my use case, right? And not suitable for crypto. Okay. This is how Manman works for those of you who are interested. I was seeing them code base and what they actually do. They just basically do XOR and they keep rotating the bits. I mean, that's how every hashing function works. Like XOR is the main game changer, but yeah, it generates me 128-bit values and it gives me 264 bits. It divides it. As you said, I go through multiple hash functions with the same hash. And okay, this is how hashing function looks like this. You take a 113, 128, this is a Java code, by the way. And here I give my object. So this is my input that comes. And I get the hash value. I take lower 8 and upper 8 and from that I find the index. Right, so it is okay if you don't understood this code. It's only what it is doing is Manman and getting the indexes and setting those bits in my array. And this is the code. This is the code which there is in the library itself by Google, which is called Guava. Okay, it is already part of that. So this is something which we have not written. So as we said, right, I wanted to control false positive. That's the whole game. In a production, I am not allowed to put into the system if you give me false positive. But remember, in a real use case, you will always have false positive. The number can be plus and minus, but it is almost close to zero. If you make it almost false positive as zero, it is very difficult. Okay. So what we do is, one is controlling the size of the array. Second is probability rate control. Now this is a parameter given in a library. For me, the reference was Guava. For other libraries, the name can be same, but this is basically probability rate control. Is the way through which you change the number of hashing functions. The more probability controller you increase, that means the more chances of having more functions and less collisions. Right? So by default, this library default number was 3.
Small question. Will it take more time to compute? I'm assuming if I increase the number of hash functions.
If you increase logically, yes. In terms of milliseconds, yes. But Manman by nature is so fast, right? That I don't know whether the system will be able to see it very practically. For me, I can only do 3. Even in the production, we went through only 3 Manman.
So it shouldn't take more time, right? Because I'd assume you would use parallel threads to compute the same array.
Exactly. In our case, no parallel thread. We did not use this. But yeah, you are right. If you move it across parallelism, it can be faster. Because this library, right, it does not give you any way through which you can run the 3 Manman parallelly. So either you have to write a code, okay, and that's how we do. Okay, let me go fast. So this is a code of our project guys, where I created an array list of 5 lakhs, okay, 5 million, I mean 50 lakhs, sorry. So 5 million packages. So these are some examples which I said. Okay, I added that into my filter. Okay, and this filter file I converted into my finally output stream and dumped my file. This is the file which I got, bloom.bin, which I was showing you as a screenshot, right? This is a pure Java code. There is no magic, no intelligence in this. This is a very simple code. The only thing which I played, right, for me, the only time which it took is, first of all, it needs to know the number of elements that you are likely going to insert. Because based on that, the library designed the size of an array. It also needs to know what is the probability rate calculator that you will put, 0.001. That means what is the false positive rate that you can afford to take. Got it? The more number you have, it is some ratio where you will have less probability or more. Right? So that's how I played, and based on that only I decided that I want almost close to 0. Okay, it is never exactly 0 false positive rate. It is very difficult. Okay, that you can aramse say that you will have 0 false positive. No. But for my data set, I made sure that for every single element that I have inserted, it gives me whether it exists or not. For a new element, even if it exists, I can afford to take some variations. So what will happen? Even say for example, for one package I have inserted and it told me it is there, even though it doesn't exist. What will happen is I will end up putting the data in my list and I will send it to the backend. Backend will again revalidate. Anyway, it knows that this is a false claim, so from the backend it will discard. Okay, so that risk I am about to take. Similarly in database, what will really happen, even if you tell it that this page that you are looking really exists or not, even if you tell me that it exists, false, what will really happen? The only thing that I can do is I can again go and retrieve my hard disk, and hard disk will tell me now that the data actually exists. So some sort of false positive, right? But I remember in database, if the data exists, I cannot afford to get no for it. The moment I get no, right, that means now I will even not look into the hard disk, which I was supposed to look into. Right? So that's where the catch is what you will have to take in consideration. Sign of an array, more space, and this is there for retrieving this. I took the same Bloomfilter file, retrieve it, and then finally this is a package name. So I ask it, restore.mycontain. That's why that it tells you it might contain. That is where the false positive it signifies in their words. Okay, may or may not.
Can we use 3 different arrays for 3 different messages?
You mean 3 different Bloomfilter instances then?
Can you use single array for 3 different messages?
I use one single array and 3 different instances, correct.
So can we use 3 different arrays for each single hash?
3 different arrays
Then
of
we can avoid false positive.
3 different arrays of, you mean that way? Yes. It is, but then you will have to get into your data set segregation, right? And what data will you go into what filter, Bloomfilter. Now you need to know that this data exists in which Bloomfilter, because if you do a for loop and you query every 3 Bloomfilter, this will be a problem, right?
We can avoid false positive.
Yeah. No, here also you can almost, no, it is not guaranteed, guys. You can never say in the word that for a new word, I will not return you true. It may. There is no guarantee there. What we are controlling is saying that
Chances will be less.
chances. But in this case also, if I increase the size of the array, my chances anyway have gone less. So in this case, right, when I was writing a script to figure out for what data set does it give me false positive, when I ran the script for around how many packages data set? Almost close to 1 CR. Okay, and the data set that I got was around 28 to 29, which was saying it's false positive. And I'm okay. Right? If it is 28, 29, which you tell me the data exists, it is okay. I will end up saying the data to my backend, and with the backend we had that good contract saying that you guys will receive some sort of validation, so you will have to write. Right, so that is a catch, and then it is used in browser for spam detection. Not in current browsers, but what really happens is the moment you do a browser, a website visit, right? The first thing which we do is your validation whether it is spam or not. Right? Typically, it happens with TLS layer, transport layer, where you validate your SSL certificate to the backend. But before hitting that also, a lot of browsers have their inbuilt list of spam Bloomfilters. So the moment they know that without hitting a backend, if the site is spam, you show that signal to the user, some sort of UI change. Right? So that's where it uses. It also uses this one we have studied, CDN. CDN is where it is being used heavily. Okay, so you know, right? See how the CDN works. CDN will cache your website. So if I visited one website, it will actually cache in there, and so the next time you visit, you will get a faster retrieval. Now, what really happens is, as per their data, for 50% of the time, if user has visited website X, he will never revisit the same website back. 50%. That's a big number. Right? So why will I have to cache something which user is only visiting even anyway once? Right? So what they do is they maintain a Bloomfilter where every site that you visit will be put into the Bloomfilter. Okay, and now what they do is if the data exists in Bloomfilter, then only next time when you hit the same data, you go for a backend hit and then cache it. Right? So in that way it works faster for it. Right? It can be used across a lot of places. I have seen one project in college where they were using Bloomfilter for packet filtering, where they wanted to discard some packets and some logic, but yeah. I mean the use case was typically same, where you can afford to take false positive but no false negative. You should always have data query. Remember, don't confuse that you never store actual data here. Right? Your actual data is never stored here. You are only hashing the data and setting those bits. Right? And it can only return true or false. So if you have a use case where you need actual data back, no way. Bloomfilter is a bad use case for it. It will never work. Right? And it never store data. Best for data validation on device. Yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you.
I have a question.
You have a question for chocolate?
My question is, in the code you showed that we can actually set the probability rate of the false positive.
Correct.
What is the trade-off of having that probability larger or smaller in terms of time and space?
So, okay, I'll tell you. When you set the probability, the percentage, right, what it internally derives is the number of hashing points. So even though you kept the size of an array, so remember when I told you, you also have to tell you the possible number of insertion. It needs to know before it. Or if you do not know what data you are heading it, or what is the capping of your data, Bloomfilter is again fractions.
So essentially, if I increase the probability rates, it would increase my compute.
If you decrease your probability rate, it will.
Because you said that it might have more hash functions, right?
If you decrease your probability calculator, you will have less hash. The more, so it's in the other way.
By decrease, I mean that I don't want any false positives. Let's say it's
you
very
don't
low.
want-
So it will increase the compute.
Correct. Then you increase 0.00001,
Yes.
and then but internally it will slightly increase the size of your byte for sure. Right, so that is a trade-off. But it's saying that it is zero false positive, no.
Have we mentioned in the code that you showed, you mentioned the size of the array that you want to
No,
show? You don't do that.
What I mentioned is the total number of elements that this array has.
Yeah.
No size. You're right. No size. Only the number of elements.
Eventually need definite answer.
When you need a definite answer saying that 100% you should not give me any false positive, no. Bloomfilter will be, that's why Bloomfilter is a good choice when you want answer as no from Bloomfilter. But it is slightly debatable choice when you want answer as probable yes. Right, so
What is the alternative?
alternative for Bloomfilter? Or true positive. So there are many variations of Bloomfilter, okay, where they tell you that one problem which you said, right? The moment you delete my Bloomfilter, my data gets corrupted. So they will internally copy paste the Bloomfilter and create a new byte array. Okay, so that is one case. Second thing is, but having almost zero false positive, I really do not know whether there is some data structure which will give you. This will also give you, if you test your data, right? In your local scripting test, it will give you typically almost 100% I have passed. Right? But when you push it into prod, so in their documentation clearly says it is 0.01 probability still there. Right? But if you cannot afford to take a risk, no, this will not.
I have a question. So in your code you have written the model for 5 million times. They were available of 6 million.
Yes. So you're right. Very nice. So I have only inserted 5 millions, but I have written for 6 million. So I have always inserted more. I mean, got the data more. Why I did this is just because I have less collision, just extra buffer for myself. Because anyway within the cap I was, right? So that.
One question. So we are using 3 hash map. What will happen?
3 hash map by default. I did not.
For example, if we are taking one hash map and is giving a number which is more than the limit we set for the array.
Which is more than the
Limit of the array that we are, in which we are setting the 1 and 0.
that is just a modulo of it,
Okay,
just to
then,
derive the indexes.
So what was the retrieval time like data? Retrieval time like
So extremely. So in milliseconds, I don't capture that, but the moment I hit might contain, right, that API, it just gives me data that is there. Obviously it will give you, right? The only thing it has to do is get the hash index by Manish, which is anyway fastest, and check those bits. So it was very fast. I mean,
When the data is very dynamic, I see your
Data is very dynamic.
You are adding it.
uh,
Like, do you think that expensive like
you mean when data is,
the data is like we said like Android apps they update or they have 1 million again you have to create
correct, that is the only way. So if your data set changes very frequently, then you will have to end up recreating the Bloomfilter file because you can't import it. That is the trade-off.
On this, how did you
Last guys.
store, in which format did you store this?
Bloomfilter byte array. When I created a file, the file is only byte array. So what it did is just basically took your array dumped into output stream.
So you use this array in your this device or
One last.
because you said that you are limited right? So,
Yeah.
so you build this array in your device this effect?
No. Okay. Probably I never did that. Thanks for it. I did not do this Bloomfilter creation of an array on a device, guys. By the time my solution reached on a device, Bloomfilter was already created. I just dumped that thing on my device. I did not create.
How much time it would take this 15 effect?
To dump onto device.
No, to complete this.
Extremely fast. So typically, if you, normally for us, our dataset was within 30 seconds, whatever the max cap, within 30 seconds, this has to calculate, send it to backend, and leave the user device. So the moment we comes onto your device or any IoT, we do. So this was only for analytics. We took the data and went away. So it's like no impression left on user device.
You are building, not computing in the device.
Computing or retrieving on a device. Retrieving, but not storing. Only for retrieval, we have to use your CPU.
Computing, how much time it took?
Computing, sir, it was very fast. I do not know actual KPI, but it is something, because it will be fast, it is always over 1. So on a normal user device, the maximum app that we see is within the ratio of 20 to 50, maximum 50. I do not see any devices which hold more than 50. So with that capping, and if we see more than 50, we did not do the, we discarded that information. Right? Because we have to take care of worst case scenario. What if the user have unlimited module wala apps? You know, right? There is a module concept in apps where you can break the monolithic app and put it. So in that, and plus we also took care of VPN. If there is a VPN running on your device, it's not a good practice to do my analytics on your device. Right? So those things, any normal company will always take. So thanks guys.
Thanks so much.